Hi, I'm Kathy from Eclectic Images and welcome to Crafting with Kathy. In this session we're going to create a blended scene on matte cardstock. So this is what I would often do on glossy card, which gives you a postcard type finish. On the matte cardstock we'll get something quite a bit softer but still really pretty. So I'm working from a photo that my husband took years ago of a sunrise over a lake and thought I'm going to have a go at recreating that. So we're going to create, here's our card. So it's got the sun coming up, reflecting on the water, and beautiful sunrise colours. Now I have to admit I've used a plethora of stamps in here, I do apologise. So we've got, to make up this scene, we've got Gumtree silhouette. I'll be using the birds out of the Farm Life set. Some reeds and some grasses from the grass set. We've got our trusty Hilly horizon, which is wonderful for creating anything from sand dunes to hillsides to snowy mountains, just depending on what colours you use with it. And also we're bringing in some of our clouds, grass and water and clouds. I'll be using a mixture of blending brushes as well as a number 10 brush to blend all my colours on. I find the blending brushes work really well on the matte cardstock, but I still find that I can get more versatility with where I can get inks too, as you'll see when we colour with this number 10 size brush. Our inks today are Catherine Pooler. They work well on gloss or matte cardstock. And again, like having too many stamps to use, I've used ink pads out of all different collections. We've got Suede shoes and Limoncello out of the Carnival collection, Blackjack and Midnight out of the Neutrals collection, and we've got Orange Twist out of the Party Collection foundation colours. If you just had the Carnival set, you could probably use Samba instead of Orange Twist, but I'm going for the brighter orange in this one. Okay, so starting off, I've already stamped the Hilly horizon on our card. Just watch when you do this one that the dotted edges go to the bottom of the hillside. It's the line that's the top edge. So with my card held upside down so you can see what I'm doing, I'm actually going to stamp our smaller Gumtree out of the Gumtree silhouette set with Midnight. Now again, very soft ink pad, so just tap really gently. And we're going to stamp that about there. Now to create where we're going to put a reflection across the water, I'm going to repeat the stamping with the Blackjack. And I'm just going to get another couple of stamps ready. So I'm just cleaning as I go. So I've got the water texture out of our clouds, grass and water set. What I'm going to do is ink up our tree on our Blackjack. We're going to just pop a mask in place here. I'm not going to put it fully in place until I'm ready to stamp so I can see where that tree is. So we grab our Blackjack, ink up the stamps, and what I'm wanting to create is a reflection across the water. So I'm going to ink up the stamp, stamp it off once on the scrap so it's not too dark, but then I'm going to get the water texture and just ripple a few lines through it, just to give it that water ripple look. A bit awkward how I'm hanging onto the block. Now, I need to line it up with that tree. So I'm actually going to hold my card this way so I can see that I've got the tree there lined up with that one. But now we pop our mask in to where we're going to put our water line and we can stamp our tree. And hopefully we get a ripply reflection that lines up pretty close with our tree. Give that one a clean. Now I also wanted to create the impression of some bushy trees in behind the horizon line. So for that, I'm going to use the larger Gumtree out of the Gumtree silhouette set. We're heading back to the Midnight ink again. And we're just using mostly the top of the tree. So I've masked the hillside. Have it so that you can see a little bit of your stamped image sticking out from under the mask. And we're just going to pop this tree in here. And it's going to just look like bushes rather than a full tree. Okay. Now, I'm going to not use that mask now that I've put so much black ink onto it. I'll switch to one that hasn't been used quite as many times. And I'm trying to remember what order I did things in for here. I think we're going to start doing some colouring next. So I'm going to, actually before I colour, I'm just going to give it a quick dry with the heat gun to make sure those inks are really dry before I start layering other inks over the top. So excuse me for a minute with the heat gun. Just make sure it's nice and dry. They will just air dry on the matte cardstock, these inks, but I'm just wanting to make sure that they're really dry before I start adding other colours, because I don't have time in a demonstration to let them just sit around and dry themselves. So we'll start off with Limoncello and the bigger of the brushes. Let's bring all our brushes over here where I can grab them. So starting off with our bigger oval brush. Of course you could use just do all your blending with this size brush, but I find if you've got the bigger one, it's nice when you're covering a bigger area, but you could certainly do it all with that medium sized brush if you preferred. Now we do need to mask our hillside. And then we just start working in from the side. Oh, actually, we're going to mask where the sun's going to go as well. So this is where I've just die cut a circle. I'm going to tuck that in there. Now we'll start colouring. So I'm working from the side of the card in. And also from the masks out. This way I'm not getting ink suddenly grabbing on the card. I'll just get right through those trees. Now, how you hold your foundation brushes when your blending brushes when you're working with them is up to you. I tend to be a bit enthusiastic with mine, so I support them at the head of the brush rather than just holding onto the handle. For some people, the handle's an easier way to use them. It's just a matter of finding what works best for you. Just building up a bit more of that yellow there. Okay. Let's switch to our orange twist. I'm working in from the sides. I'm going to start fairly softly and then keep building up some more intensity there. And just make sure I blend it out nice and softly on all of those edges so that it just blends in with our other colours. Okay, we're going to add some over the tree line here. And because sunrises aren't always even, I'm going to add a little bit more, just like a streak of colour coming across here. And make sure my edges are all nice and soft. Now I'm just going to switch, while I've got that orange out, I'm just going to switch to the smaller size brush. And we're going to put a little bit around our sun mask. So I can streak a little bit of colour, just smudge a bit of colour that way, and then blend it out with circles a bit. Just going to have to move my card around so that I keep working at a nice angle for me here with this little brush. And streak around, then give it some circles. And that'll create a bit more intense colour just around the sun. Now going to switch to suede shoes. For this one we're going to blend over the top part of the sky and blend it down into the orange and yellow a bit. Starting off soft and then building up some more colour. Now I'm wanting to add just some clouds into the sky there. So I'm just going to grab our cloud stamp, pop it onto an acrylic block. Now this stamp, it's a very solid stamp. It's quite dynamite. I don't ever stamp directly onto, well, very, very rarely stamp directly onto my card with it. I nearly always stamp off onto the scrap once first and then stamp onto the card. And I'm going to do a mixture of actually stamping it and dragging it. So ink up gently, make sure I've inked the whole stamp, tap it off on my scrap paper, and then starting off on the edge of the card, I'm just going to do a few little streaky bits as well. And I'm going to switch the card around the other way, ink up again, off on the scrap, and do some little drag lines. Okay, that's our sky starting to come together. Just clean off the clouds and move those out of the way because we're going to need this acrylic block for another stamp. Now to start colouring the water. So I'll tuck suede shoes away and go back to Limoncello. Pop our mask in where we want our waterline to be. And we're wanting to make sure that we're fairly even to the card. And also just check again where your sun is coming over the horizon because that's the area that we want to leave white. So back to our big blending brush, and we're going to do a bit of shading across the card, trying to leave that area white. So I'm going to come in on this side a bit. I think I'm doing a really good job today of actually making sure I get my arms and hands in front of the camera as much as possible. I'm blocking your view of the card. I apologise for that. Okay, let's bring the yellow in a little bit more on that side. Switch out to our orange twist. And follow much the same line. And moving on to the blue. Suede shoes. It's good blue, this one. Just building up a little bit more on the outer corner and then going a bit softer as I'm blending into the other colours. Again, concentrating on that corner. And a little bit along the bottom edge. That's fine, we've got the card there. Ink up our water texture, which is what we used to create the ripples on the gum tree. We're going to now ink that stamp with the suede shoes. Tap it off once on the scrap and then bring in some water texture. I'll turn the stamp around because the sides are different, so that means we get a different pattern. We're not just repeating the same pattern. I'm just going to spin my card around and repeat that on the other side. So we ink our stamp up, tap off once, and then bring in some ripples. You'll see again I'm concentrating them mainly where the blue is and just bring in some very soft ones across the lighter areas. So that's given us our light hitting the water, and as well a little bit of the sunrise colours. Okay, so we've still got this white looking hilly horizon there. To get rid of that, this is where the future brushes are really, really good. With the shape of this brush, I can actually manipulate it. By putting pressure on it, I can actually wiggle and get quite a good edge to it. You can't do this with the other bigger blending brushes. So to colour in this hillside, what I can do is just mask my water, and then I can just wiggle this brush in and get right up to that edge of the stamped line without having to try and have both edges masked. Just realised I was going to use blackjack here and I've gone into the midnight instead, but that's okay. Because I'm shading it, it's going to be a bit softer than the stamped images, so it's still going to come up grayer than those, which is fine. And we'll leave a little bit lighter there where there's a bit of that morning sunlight hitting the hillside. Now to really create the look of distance across the water, if we get the smaller grasses image from the grass set, which is this lovely little delicate image. It's a bit hard to see because I've stamped it with archival ink so many times that it's got fairly stained. So I'm just going to stamp it out onto the scrap paper so you can see. It's lovely and delicate. So what we're going to do with this one is create some reeds across the other side of the lake. Some of them in the water, some of them right on the shoreline. And I also want to give these some shadows across the water as well, some reflections. So let's change to our blackjack for that, the grey colour. Give our stamp a clean. And I'm going to ink up on the blackjack. Have my mask ready, stamp off on the scrap. fact, the curvy edge of the mask might work better. And then I'm just going to touch it lightly. I just want a little bit of, I don't want a full stamped image, I just want a little bit of lines there that shows that we've got reflections on the water. So stamping off gently. Add a couple of lines in. Now, because these grasses actually curve, I'm actually holding the stamp on a bit of an angle so that I get them a little bit straighter. Otherwise it's looking too much like I've got curving this way on the stamp and then curving that way on the reflection. So we're just trying to straighten them up a little bit. Wayward little fellows that they are. And that again, by having the reflections there, will help create the feeling that it is water, and also it's going to create our perspective across that water. Now we're going to, with our blackjack, stamp some foreground foliage. For this, I'm using the grass set and the reeds. Ink it up, and I'm just going to wipe off where I just inked my thumb as well. That often happens when you're inking your stamps. Ink it up. Have a look where on your picture it's going to fit best. And pop some pressure on. And we'll pop this on the other side of the card as well. So make sure you're inking the whole stamp, but just with gentle taps. Now the bigger of the reeds, so with the reeds you get two different sizes in the set. You get the larger one and the smaller one. And it's going to look good if these images overlap, because when you're looking at a shoreline, you don't get just a reed and a reed. They're all interlocking and flowing. So we're going to make sure we overlap them a bit here. Let's just grab a small acrylic block ready for our small reeds. I really love that effect with the tree of taking colour off it, so that it makes sure that it looks like it's rippling across the water. So I don't want to cover it up too much, so I'm popping a bit of reeds in without going completely over the top of that. I think we'll just fill this bit in with a bit of extra small reeds as well. Just creating a little bit more foliage there. Now I'm almost finished, but I do think that we need some birds. I've just got to find where I've hidden the little fellows. Here we go. So these ones, it's a very, very delicate stamp. Too much pressure will often make it smudge out. So we're going to ink it with the lightest of touches. And I'm just going to show you on the scrap paper again. It's always a good idea to stamp it on the scrap paper as well, just to make sure you've got it up the right way. So I'll turn it upside down so you can see what I'm stamping. So whereas normally when you're putting a stamp down, you apply a fair bit of pressure. With this one, you basically touch it to the paper and lift off, and that's enough. If you press down, you'll smudge those little delicate images out. Now where do we want our birds with this one? And have some certainly going across in front of the sun. So ink up gently. Touch to the paper and lift up. Is that enough? I think we might have some more either side. Do you ever have trouble knowing when to stop? I do. I start going, oh, I could put this in, I could put that in. Tough knowing when to stop. But you know, can you ever have too many little birds in a picture? I think we're done. Okay, let's pop it out with the black behind it. So I would mount that up, because we've got all that black imagery there, I would actually mount that up on black card. Now I'll move my work pad out of the way so you can see it. So mount it up on black so it's got a nice border around it. And there we go. I hope you like it. As I said, I'm really happy with how the reflections come out. And remember, that was by stamping it off, so it's a second generation stamped image. And we also used the water texture to actually lift out some colour and give it the look of the water ripples going through it. Okay, I hope you get a chance to try this one. As I said, both the inks and the images could work well on matte or gloss cardstock, and the blending brush is the same, can be used on matte or gloss, and you'll get lovely effects. So please have a try of this one to create some sunrises and see how you go. Thanks for watching.